again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into D&D classes and subclasses to give you a better understanding of how they were designed to work and how to get the most out of your character. So, today, I'm going to be continuing what I did last night, or yesterday, where I'm going to be going through the new Unearthed Arcana subclasses that came out in February, but just focusing on one subclass per video, just to see if it works a little better. As any of you that watch this know, these get kind of long because I tend to ramble and this stutter, and they are very complicated, so I'm hoping just to see how these kind of shorter videos will work. That being said, yesterday's video was not incredibly short. Today's, I kind of think it will be. We're going to be doing... we're going to be looking at the Druid Circle of the Stars. The Druid was the third video I ever made in this series, and like I've mentioned many times before, in the fifth edition, the idea behind class design is each class should feel very different from the other classes, and what makes those classes unique should show up within the first two levels. Now, Druids are a little bit unique in the fact that they get their subclass at second level. So, compared to a lot of other classes, the subclass of the Druid massively changes how you play the class, because they treat it as kind of a defining aspect of the class, with it coming in so early. That being said, there's still a few things that all Druids kind of have together. As I mentioned in my previous video on Druids, Druids are not designed to be like other full casters, where like clerics are designed to kind of work between two extremes. They can be the kind of healers support class, where they're helping their allies a lot while still doing the damage, or they can shift to the other end of this spectrum, and be kind of artillery units, where they can create pretty powerful spells. They can they have a lot of area effects spells. They're really interesting, and their chosen subclass will kind of hone them into that. Or things like wizards, sorcerers, and warlocks tend to be very aggressive in nature. They're designed to do a lot of damage. That they can do other things as well, like alter self and other things like that. But most of their class abilities are designed to let them unleash hell on enemies in a variety of different ways. Now, I'm not saying you can't have wizards that can do a lot of kind of support kind of stuff, or warlocks that are more defensive in nature. It's just kind of how the classes are geared. The Druid, on the other hand, is designed to be what I kind of consider a controller. Way back in the fourth edition, there were four different roles. You had the defenders, who they were tanks. You had strikers, who did lots of damage. You had leaders, who healed people and buffed them. Then you had controllers, who just controlled the battlefield. Sometimes that would be moving allies around. Sometimes it'd be moving enemies around. It would be giving combat advantage, or lowering speed, giving them debuffs to their attack, or buffs to your allies' attack. Like, they were just designed to control the battlefield. And the Druid kind of fits into that, because they have so many different things they can do, and that is both an advantage of the class and a disadvantage. Because the Druid can fit into so many roles, they can be a nuking type class, like a wizard or a sorcerer. They can be a healing type class, like a cleric. or even a paladin sometimes. They can be very defensive, like a tank style class, and everything in between. But because of that, with your druid, you do need to kind of choose what you want to do. Because if you hedge your bets and go, well, I want to have some attack spells, but I also want to have some healing spells, and I want to have some defensive, you're going to feel very underpowered because you kind of become a jack of all trades, master and a none. And everyone else that is specialized in the party will do everything that you can do, just better. So that's what kind of the druid is. The two kind of defining aspects of the druid are definitely, again, the nature kind of spell casting. Most of their spells are going to have something to do with nature. They can make the vines grow. They can get berries to feed people. Like, all their stuff is going to be nature based in general. And that does mean they will have access to elemental abilities as well, because the elements are part of nature. And then the other aspect of them is their wild shape. That is kind of the defining feature of druids in general. Even if you are playing like a Circle of the Land druid, where they focused almost entirely on their spell casting, your wild shape is still going to change how you interact with the world, even when you can't do combat wild shapes and the things like that. So with that in mind, the Circle of Stars actually uses both of those things together and gives them just a little bit of a twist to make it feel unique, to the point where I like this better than the Circle of the Land, or the Circle of the Moon. Both of those just focus really heavily on only one aspect of the druid, and let the other one kind of atrophy just a little bit. So let's go into the Circle of Stars itself. You get again a couple different things right at second level. For the first thing you get is what's called star map. You basically create this star map, which they actually have a list of star maps that you can use, like a scroll of the living wood that aligns with heavenly bodies, or a collection of maps bound in an ebony cover. It's all that stuff is all for flavor text, but it's important flavor text. It's going to kind of flavor how you see the class and how you see yourself using the class. So you can just roll a d6 for it, or you can pick the one that you like the best. Either way, this star map, first of all, can be used as your spellcasting focus, which is important for casters in general. Your spellcasting focus allows you to ignore material components that don't have a cost associated with them, which is a big deal. And in general, your spellcasting focus is also going to have other things that it can help you with. For this specifically, first things first, if you lose the map, you can perform a 1-hour ceremony to magically create a replacement, and that destroys the previous map. So if you misplace it, or someone steals it, instead of them finding out all this stuff about you, you just spend an hour, it disintegrates in their hands, and you have a new one. The other thing that's interesting is your star map actually gives you access to 2 spells whenever you hold it, that you can just cast without using a spell slot. You have the Augury, which is basically an information gathering spell, and Guiding Bolt, which is a really useful offensive spell. It does the damage, which is useful, but it also outlines the enemy in glowing light, which gives which makes the next person that attacks them have advantage on the attack roll. We talked yesterday with the Artificer's Infiltrator armor. Their perfect armor ability did something very similar to that. and it's massively useful. So having that be able to be something you can do without actually expending a spell slot is really good. Now, you are limited a little bit. It's not like you now have these as cantrips. You can cast a spell from the map in this way and a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So you are limited to a maximum of 5 casts per day. But those are, I believe, both level 1 spells. That's an additional 5 level 1 spell slots. Again, it's for very specific things, but it's still really useful. And when you look at a druid as that kind of controller style, play style, it can be really, really useful. As well. So I like that. I think it's really interesting, and it gives you a reason to have a connection to your spellcasting focus. For like wizards and clerics and that, your spellcasting focus is just what you use to cast spells. But for the Circle of the Stars Druid, your spellcasting focus is an intrinsic part of your character itself. You made it yourself. It has special abilities for only you. I like that. It gives more weight to it. Starry form is the second thing you get. It's the second level, and while the first one affected your spell casting, one half of the druid equation, starry form affects your wild shape, and it actually gives you, as a casting based version of the druid, it gives you a reason to use your wild shapes. Basically, as an action, you can expend a use of your wild shape feature to take on a starry form rather than transforming into a beast. The starry form, you basically look like a constellation kind of thing. Visually, it's really cool. I like the idea of in the middle of battle, your druid can just start kind of glowing, and all their joints they look like star points, and you look like a living constellation. I just think it sounds cool. Mechanically, the form sheds bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet, and it lasts for 10 minutes or until you're incapacitated. So not quite the beast shape where it can last for hours, but still extremely useful. And then the other aspect of it is when you assume this is starry form, you actually choose a constellation that will actually glimmer on your body and will change how the class works. And this feeds into that idea of druids being able to kind of specialize themselves in a lot of different roles. Each one of these constellations will allow you to focus on a different aspect of being a druid, which again is really nice. And the other thing that's nice about it is this is something you choose when you go into your starry form. So it's not like a choice you make at level 2 and then you're stuck with it. So again, it feeds into that very much amorphous aspect of the druid, where they can kind of on the fly choose different ways to help the group. The first constellation is the Chalice. Whenever you cast a spell using a spell slot that restores hit points to a creature, you or another creature within the 30 feet of you can regain hit points equal to 1d8 plus half your level in this class. This is a super useful ability for keeping allies up if you're in a bad situation where allies are dropping. You can heal one ally and give another ally hit points at the exact same time. Or yourself if you're getting a little bit low. The amount of uses for this are just exponential. Again, it turns you into a kind of healer that you really don't see anywhere else, where you're healing multiple people, even with just a level 1 cure wounds or healing word. You can do a fairly large amount of healing pretty easily. So that's cool. The Archer Constellation gets you a bonus action that you can use to make a ranged spell attack. Uh, Hurling an arrow to a creature within 60 feet of you, you can see. And on a hit, the attack deals radiant damage equal to 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier. So you have a bonus action as an archer, which when you combine, again, the druid itself is a caster. If you want to be that kind of ranged damage dealer, the archer works really well. Because you can sit there, you can cast your spells and do major damage, and then just lob an extra attack on there to do extra damage to the target you just attacked. Or if you want to spread it out, or something a lot of people don't think about, is if you have a caster on the other team and they're concentrating on a really damaging spell, use that archer bonus action to force them to make a concentration check. Because in general, concentration, breaking concentration is just a matter of if you hit them enough. Even if you're only hitting them for like a d4 of damage, every time they roll, they have a chance to fail. And there's until you get to really, really high levels, there's very, very little chance of them not being able to fail a basic concentration check. Archer kind of turns you into that more aggressive attacking base. And then the final one is the Dragon Constellation. When you make an intelligence or wisdom check, or a constitution saving throw to maintain concentration on a spell, you can treat a roll of 9 or lower on the d20 as a 10. This is a massive deal. It basically means that while you are have the Dragon Constellation, you can't actually fail a concentration, a base level concentration check, because the DC for your concentration check is either 10, the DC of 10, or half the damage of the attack that made you perform the concentration check, whichever one is higher. So a lot of times you're going, because in order to get above a 10, they have to do at least 22 damage or more in a single attack, which can happen with spellcasters and that, but a lot of the higher level creatures use multi-attack to get their extra damage out there. So they're just making you roll that 10 or 11 or 12 DC concentration check, but they're doing like 60 or 70 damage in the 3 hits. So with this, getting a 10 on any roll means, in general, even if you only have a constitution of like plus 2 or something, that means your minimum roll is a 12, meaning the minimum damage that can force you to actually fail is going to be 26 damage in a single attack. Again, concentration is a limiting aspect of a lot of spells for spellcasters in general, and the ability to kind of ignore the concentration checks for a large portion of your adventuring career is great. The intelligence and wisdom checks are also really useful. Intelligence checks can be used to find traps when you really need it, to recall information that you really need. Wisdom can be used for so many different things: animal handling, perception. If you just really need to find that thing bad, go dragon's starry form and go for it. So yeah, I like it. I think it's interesting. At 6th level, you get an ability called Cosmic Omen, which is another thing that I really think flavors this class uniquely. But basically, when you finish a long rest, you can consult your star map for omens. You roll a d6 at the beginning of the day. If you roll an even, you get a wheel. If you roll an odd, you get a woe. With wheel, whenever a creature you can see within 30 feet of you makes an attack roll, a saving throw, or an ability check, you can use your reaction to roll a d6 and add that number to the roll. Add that number rolled to the total. Woe is the exact opposite. You can use your reaction to roll a d6 and subtract the number rolled from the total. So this is effectively a more powerful of a version of the Bless spell, which is a really underutilized spell, because the first level spell, a lot of people don't think Bless and Bane, basically, and a lot of people don't think about it because it only adds a d4, but it subtracts a d4 with Bane. But that d4 can be the difference between succeeding or failing often. And this basically gives you that ability. Now, you can use this reaction a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. You get all the uses back when you do a long rest. So again, limited to your wisdom modifier, but again, very, very useful. You've got an ally that's trying to go across something, and they need a good acrobatics check, or they're going to fall and cause a lot of issues for your party. Give an extra d6 if you have your wheel that day. You have a bad guy who's rolling something really nasty, like a finger of death or something like that. Give them a woe. Make it that much harder for them to hit. Again, it really feeds into that controller aspect, because this can actually give you control over the action economy, because anytime you fail an ability that you were trying to use, that's removing an action from the economy. And if it's your team that's doing that, your team is losing actions. And if the enemy that's doing that, your team is gaining an advantage. So Wheel and Woe can turn failures into successes for your allies, and successes into failures for your enemies. And depending on what you roll at the beginning of the day will depend on what you have the ability to affect, which I really like. I think it's a really cool ability. I haven't seen it too much in other classes. The Divination Wizard has something kind of similar, where they roll a couple d20s at the start of the day, and then they can just choose to replace a roll with one of those d20s sometime in the day. However, this is a little bit more useful, because you have more uses of it, and it's adding or subtracting, not just replacing a roll. If you roll like an 11 on your die for Divination Wizard, 11 isn't really going to do a ton to anything. It's not going to give you a huge advantage. It's not going to give a huge disadvantage. It can basically just lessen how badly something affects you for the most part. At the 10th level, you get what's called Full of Stars. And that's basically, whilst the starry form is active, you become partially incorporeal, which gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Again, if you're trying to build your Druid to be a little bit more tanky, where they can take a hit. You have spells that can augment that, and this Full of Stars will give you that as well. Also, if you are playing the healer or the controller, because a lot of controls type spells are concentration, the ability to be resistant to any kind of damage is useful. Because it will lower what your concentration check would be. And again, if you're dragon, it makes it that much more difficult for them to be able to make you lose concentration. So again, all of it kind of fitting back, and all of these things going really well into amplifying what defines this class. And then the 14th level ability, and the last one, is Star Flare. I think this is probably one of the most interesting abilities I've seen. Basically, you create a burst of light in a 30-foot radius sphere centered on a point you can see within 120 feet of you. So this is a 60-foot in the diameter sphere with 120 feet. That is a battlefield. You can immediately teleport each willing creature in this sphere to an unoccupied space within the 30 feet of it, and each creature remaining in this sphere must succeed on a con save against your spell save DC, or take 4d10 radiant damage and be blinded until the end of your next turn. And once you use the action, you can't use it again until you do a long rest, or you burn a 5th level or higher spell slot to use it again. There are so many different uses for this. Obviously, the most obvious one is this is a really great mass damage spell. Every creature within 60 feet is going to take the damage and possibly be blind. Which is really useful. And you don't have to worry about any of your allies, because you just teleport them out. So that's useful. However, it's that teleporting the thing that makes this so interesting. If you center this so you have your entire party in there, that basically means you can move your entire party anywhere within 90 feet of the center of this sphere, because it's you have to be within the 30 feet of the sphere, and the sphere or 60 feet, sorry. The sphere has like the 30-foot radius. So you can basically mass move your party anywhere within 60 feet. And that also means if your party is spread out and you need to regroup, use that. If you're trying to get to a place that you can't, like, getting over a massive, like, a 40-foot chasm or something, you could technically use this to just mass teleport your party 60 feet. You can use it to bring all your party members together for a group heal or a group buff, or to just get them all near the paladin so they can use their auras. Like, there's so much you can use this ability for other than the damage, which again, they only take damage and get blinded if they fail. Even if they all fail, you still have the benefit of you have just changed the entire makeup of the battlefield. The other thing you can use this for is actually just spread your party out. If you have a caster that's lobbing for fireballs and firestorms and the things like that, and your party just can't get out of a fireball formation, teleport them out and spread them out so that the party is not getting hit by these super damaging spells. You can even use it to get, like, your casters away from the bad guy that you're trying to fight, and all your melee people closer to him, or behind the baddie, especially if he has, like, guards or a wall or something that's preventing you from getting to him. And again, this is a 30-foot radius sphere. So theoretically, You can also use it for vertical movement. Like if you put the sphere here and your players are down here at the very edge of this sphere, you can teleport them 30, 60, 90 feet into the air or anywhere around there. So again, this is a massively useful spell, and you have one use you can always use, and then burning of a fifth level spell slot to get another one is just really useful. So again, I love this idea. I love the focus on just kind of the astral aspects of it. I love the fact that not only does it buff your casting abilities, but it also gives you new, unique ways to use your wild shape, which I think the Circle of the Land, which is the kind of traditional caster druid in the PHB, kind of ignores, and the wild shape just kind of becomes a utility to, cross chasms and stuff like that, give you different movement styles or espionage kind of things. Anyway, that's the Circle of Stars Druid. In the comments below, let me know what you think of this Circle of Stars Druid. Is this something you would allow in your own games? Is this a class you would want to play in your own games? Otherwise, that is all for me today. I will see you guys tomorrow with the final subclass. All right? Bye-bye.